Welcome to Backstage with Becca B, with special guest Elizabeth Durand Streisand. Hi everyone, and welcome to this episode of Backstage with Becca B. On this episode, this celebrity journalist turned CEO co-created her own business to sell tickets to Broadway shows. Here to talk about Broadway Roulette and Broadway mixers, please welcome Elizabeth Durand Streisand. Have a busy day on Zoom.
Yeah, I'm like zoomed out, but on my phone, so it was at least slightly.
It's the new world. It's like, what do you have going on today? Oh, like 20 Zoom meetings.
I know. It's like I had a Zoom like social event last night, and I had to just not look at my screen and just talk because I was just so tired of looking at my screen.
Just like turn the camera off. Yes, exactly. No, I totally get that.
So I'm happy to do whatever it is you'd like to do.
Yeah, I'm happy to have you on to talk about like what you've created, basically.
Sure.
But first, I was gonna ask, have you, as a child, did you like perform in theater? You didn't? Did you go to theater, or did you?
Theater? Not really. I was kind of more into. I was a ballet dancer.
Okay.
And I was a rhythmic gymnast, which is like the ribbons and the hula hoops and stuff.
Yeah.
But the only class I ever dropped out of was I took an acting class in college, because it was supposed to be an easy A. And like the first day they asked everybody to like get into the center of the room and like, I don't know, say something, like give a monologue or something. And I literally just like walked to the door and left. Like I just not for me. I love watching theater. I'm fine to like talk, like speaking in public doesn't bother me. Hosting things doesn't bother me. I do not want to perform like that.
So you were like, no, I'm out.
I walked to the door. Yeah.
That's so funny because like, I feel like with a lot of people who work behind the scenes in entertainment, it's like they used to do something as a child that involved what they're doing behind the scenes now. So that, I guess dance though.
Yeah, I liked being on stage, but I think the idea of it's different when you're acting, like when you're doing ballet, I thought of it much more as a sport in my head. Like you're telling a story, but I thought of it as a sport, not as acting. I wasn't trying to like communicate emotion with my face or my words. It was just like performing, movements. And somehow that extra layer of like pretend you're someone else and like make yourself it was like a level of vulnerability that I did not enjoy. So
you probably never thought that you would be like working in the theater industry.
No, I did not think I would ever be doing this.
What was your original plan? Like your original
I thought I was going to work in fashion. I moved to New York and got a job working at Calvin Klein, and I went to Parsons, and I thought I was going to be like a fashion writer. I didn't really have like a concrete perfect vision board going into it, but I wanted to. Carrie Bradshaw seemed like a good gig to me, and that's what I was going to go do. And I ended up doing that for a little while. I kind of stumbled into celebrity journalism from there. Celebrity journalism was just an easier gig. Like it paid way better. A lot more people read it. There was a lot more opportunity for just like interesting career growth. And so I did that for like 10 years. And I actually really, I complained about it a lot when I was in it, but I was really good at it. And I really liked it. I didn't like that I was sort of at kind of a plateau where there wasn't a lot of ways for me to grow, or like, as my husband would say, to scale.
Yeah.
And then we had this idea for this company, like maybe people would go see Broadway if they didn't know what they were seeing, and it was just a surprise, and it was just not too expensive, and you just kind of made it like a lower stress experience. We went to Broadway like once every couple months And every time we went, it was this, like, we basically went wherever we could see with a TDF discount, like using his mom's login. That was like how we got tickets to things. And we always had a really good time. And we lived in New York, but we still just didn't go that much. And every time we left the theater, we're like, why don't we go more? This is so weird. Every time we go, we have a great time. And one thing like led to another. And eventually we sort of started this on the side. And then as it picked up steam, there kind of came like a tipping point where I couldn't have 2 full-time jobs. And here we are.
Did your was your husband involved in theater? What?
I think that's part of the genesis for the company, the original company of Broadway Roulette, was that I think people who are in theater and who did theater growing up and who are really passionate about it, it's hard for them to imagine that there are people in the world who would just see anything, because the group that's like working at the ad agencies and working for a producer, and like they aren't going to go see just a random surprise show, because they know exactly what they want to see and they have friends in the shows and they're so close to it. I think that it could never like occur to them that there's a whole subset of people that go to that TKTS booth, and when they get there, they're just reading the list of shows on the board and they're just picking whichever from that. Like it's not quite a roulette, but it's almost a roulette. Like most of them don't go knowing what tickets they're going to buy until they get there. And I think, when we first started going around to making the rounds to, ad agencies and general managers and places like that, and pitching this idea, like people's heads exploded. They were very offended by the idea that this would happen. We were told nobody would do it. No, people would hate the show. You could sell the ticket, but then people are going to be mad. They're not going to like the show. They're going to complain, like just a million things about why this wouldn't work. And they just were wrong. Like it wouldn't work for them. That's totally true. This would not work for them. But there's the majority of people who buy tickets to Broadway shows are not people who work in Broadway. So there's a big disconnect there. And, over time, we were able to actually provide data that showed, yes, people will buy the tickets. They actually enjoy the show. They actually enjoy the show more when they don't know anything about the show. Like there's a lot of interesting psychological pieces to it. There's a lot of studies about psychology of choice. And by removing that piece, you actually prime someone to just not be too stressed about it. And by not feeling pressure and not being too stressed, they can just enjoy whatever it is, even if it's something that they've never heard of and wouldn't have picked on their own. So it's not like foolproof, but it works very well almost all of the time. And I think that because my husband and I were both not really well versed, because we both went to random shows where we didn't know what things were and we just bought tickets to stuff we just thought the title was cool or whatever. I think that like helped us see something that people that had been in the space for a long time wouldn't be able to see.
Yes. And I mean, also like there's something cool about going to New York and not seeing, like if you're a tourist in New York, and I mean, you obviously want to go for like a certain show, but there's something cool about going and not seeing that same show over and over again and seeing a different show maybe. Yeah. Like, there's one show people like seeing over and over again, obviously, but if you don't explore everything Broadway has to offer, then you'll never know that there's like a whole other world of shows out there. I think,
the best, like when the system works the best, it's when you found something that somebody really loved that they truly would have never seen otherwise. Like that's like the magic. It's easy to send somebody to like Hamilton and the Lion King and know that they're going to have a good time. But sending somebody to the prom who never heard of the prom and they leave and it was like a life-changing experience that they weren't expecting is like a really cool thing that we can provide, both to boost shows like with sales, but also with word of mouth marketing, but also to like help people have like make the most of their time in New York.
Yeah.
It's easy to pick the 2 shows that like bought all the billboards, but there's 35 other shows that don't have that mind share, that have something really interesting to offer. So, that's kind of that was the genesis.
That you don't see on every online ad when you're going like buying flights to New York.
Shows have a very short, they're a little bit like restaurants in the sense that each show is its own independent kind of like startup, if you will. It's its own company. Every show is its own business. And they have a very narrow window in which to make or break to like get, to get their money in and then to make all their money back and then to start making money or they die. It's not the kind of thing like if you film something and you put it on like Netflix, it can build over time. It can like grow over time and you can continue to generate revenue sort of indefinitely. And maybe it like something weird happens and a TikTok person finds it 2 years later and all of a sudden it blows up. The timeline for Broadway isn't that. It either has to hit or it doesn't. So getting a bunch of people in, especially during previews when there isn't that word of mouth and that excitement yet for every show, can be really a huge help to the shows to help them get their footing faster. And like give them a better chance of getting to that place where they can recoup and where they can start to make money. But it's a hard, like it's a labor of love and is not for the faint of heart to like invest or try to put up a Broadway show.
Yeah, it's a hard industry, and I don't think people realize that like not every show that comes to Broadway is an automatic success. Most aren't.
80%, I think it's 70 or 80% of the shows never make their money back.
That's
the numbers are skewed because if you look across the board at like how much did Broadway bring in last year, it's very skewed because there's a number of shows at the very top that brought in a ton, and then all the rest. And there's very few that are in that spot. The shows that are sort of the long running staples that have kind of hit that 5-year mark, those are few and far between, especially the ones that don't ever become like a Lion King. Like they exist, like Beautiful or like Waitress. Like there were some that really kind of had like a sweet run for a while, but those are not common.
Yeah.
So it's good our mission truly is to like make it easier to go see Broadway, like just less stressful, less expensive, so that it just feels like something that you could do on a Tuesday night and not worry about it. And if it wasn't your favorite show, like nobody's angry.
And I love the less expensive thing.
I think people put so much pressure on their like night out because they've spent all this time picking the show. They figured out where to sit. They paid $50 in fees. Like by the time you get in there, if this isn't like an earth-shattering, life-changing experience, you're very sad. Yeah. And it's stressful, and you want the people you're with to have a good time. If you're the person who picked the show, like there's all that extra pressure. So removing all of that so that nobody picked, we picked, here are your seats, like it or don't like it. It was basically the same cost as like your dinner without your drinks before. That's the idea, to just get people to go more, because as you go more, you can also then become a more educated theater goer who can start to pick your own shows. But like the idea is not to kind of indoctrinate everyone to go see every single show and never ever pick a show. We certainly have people that use our service that way, but the idea really is to like curate a group of theater goers who feel confident enough that they feel like they can spend $150 to $300 on a ticket and like not be stressed because they've seen enough things that they know that this is going to be something they're going to enjoy.
Yes.
Right? So the idea is just to help educate the consumers.
Okay, now I'm like, I wish that like I had gone through this for Waitress when I went with my dad, because my dad, I'm sure a lot of other males have gone through this with like their daughters who have gone and seen Waitress, and they're like, I love Waitress. My mom loved it. My dad was like, Becca, that was like such a girly show. I'm like, Dad, what do you mean? I mean, he went and he saw Jeremy Jordan in it, so like there were some crazy Jeremy Jordan fans in the audience, so he had that, and it was like a concert experience. But
I think Waitress was a show that many people didn't really understand what it was.
Yeah.
There was also a lot of children at that show when I went.
Oh yeah.
Which was fine. Most of them didn't even understand what was happening, but I'm like, this really isn't like a children's show, but fine.
It's really not.
It's not really a children's show.
It's really not, and people didn't understand when they cast big names in that show. I think people also didn't understand that it's not a concert.
Right. Yeah.
You're not going to see a concert. Is there a favorite show? How many years has Broadway Roulette been around now?
Broadway Roulette's been like around since 2016.
Okay, so is there a favorite show that you've sent people to over the years?
There's been a lot. They're always the underdog shows. The ones that I like sending people to the best are the underdog shows that I know are going to be a hit when they get there. So like the prom was definitely one, because we got a lot of phone calls in advance from people about the prom, like reading the what it's about, deciding they didn't want to see it, they're offended by it before they see it, telling them that we're not going to respin for you, go or don't go, but we think you should go, and then having like an amazing time. So that was a good one. Bandstand was another one that I loved sending people to. I think like the talent in that show was great. It was also a really good like intro to Broadway show. I think because the dancing was so great and they had live musicians on stage and the story was like, it was like an actual story that was easy to follow. It wasn't some weird, like, it wasn't trying to be something super complicated. It was just like, here is a story about people who served the country and this is what happened when they got back. So people who don't go as often, I think, could really relate to that and link to it in a way that some other shows are harder for them to kind of mentally get into. So I loved Bandstand. I also thought Laura Osnes was incredible.
Yeah, I was going to say, how can you?
I know she helped develop that role, but that was just such a great role for her. The other one, I think recently we sent a lot of people to Seawall, and we had a lot of commentary from people about that in advance, of people thinking it like, quote, wasn't a real Broadway show because it was only like 2 people in it. And I was like, it's like 2 incredibly famous, amazing actors, like go see it. And if you really hated it, call us tomorrow. And that was another show where people were like, my mind exploded. Like that was amazing. So
yeah, I heard good things about that.
Those are, I mean, it's easy to send people to like, you know, the Hamiltons and like the Lion Kings and things like that and have them have a great time. But the ones where people call and complain, and I know that if you go, you're 95% gonna not call me again tomorrow because you're going to have a great time and I'm gonna get an email that's like, okay, it was fine, we had a great time. That's like the shows that are like the sweet spot for me.
Yeah, you're gonna get a, oh, I didn't mean to call and complain yesterday.
That was people commenting on Facebook that were like, I was wrong, it wasn't me. Like that gives us, that like is our, like, that's like our lifeblood, is like customers apologizing who were unhappy and then finally went to see the show and then actually enjoyed it. Those are the most rewarding by far.
I was gonna ask.
It's nice to send people like jackpot tickets where like you could not get this seat ever at this price. Like, yes, you won Hamilton and you paid $50 or whatever. That's always a good feeling, but that's just like, that's easy to do. That's like, you can do that and you know people are, I think the art of knowing based on what somebody eliminated and what they've liked in the past and haven't liked in the past, and having the algorithm predict that they're going to like this show that they've never heard of called Prom, is a thing that's really interesting about our business.
Yeah, and I think I don't know when this started happening, but somewhere along the way of the prom, of its short run, it started getting a lot of talk. So it
was an interesting, they had in post show debriefs, it was really interesting because the challenge that team said that they had was that people would go, they would love it, but they said in like forms and following up afterwards and surveys that even though they loved it, they didn't feel comfortable recommending it because of the subject matter. So like Broadway shows heavily rely on this idea of like, you build this word of mouth and you get one person to go and they tell 5 friends and those 5 friends, you know, the snowball, and that the prom felt like they couldn't get that because people loved it, but they didn't want to recommend it to others in case other people were like offended. Which was really interesting and not something I would have thought is like I didn't think the topic was that controversial, but I also live in Manhattan. So, you know, I think that there's like you forget sometimes, but they said that was something that was reported from people that was like, I had a great time, but like, no, I didn't tell anyone to go see it.
Yeah, you do forget that there are people who are gonna like question the subject matter in the world, because I mean, I've lived in Los Angeles the past 5 years, so that was the same to me when you were saying that. I was like, wait, people got offended, or like people like didn't tell their friends about the subject matter? Weird, because like I'm all about the music, so it's like if the music's good, if the
and the cast was phenomenal, like the show was empirically a great show, but not every great show survives.
The ensemble, I think, was one of the best I've ever seen.
They were really great.
So, and then when Broadway shut down this year, and I mean, obviously you can't send people to shows anymore. How did you think of the idea of Broadway mixers?
I mean, I don't have like a great answer for that besides we brainstormed. Like my team and I sat around and tried to think of things we could do to have a business. We saw a lot of places doing content for free. We saw a lot of places trying to do like, I don't know, like merch stores and like Times Talk kind of things, like very curated where you bought tickets to see individuals speak. And we just felt like we didn't want to compete on any of that stuff. Or produce plays, like they do like readings and things, like that's not our specialty. We don't want to try to play in that space. So it kind of came down to like making a list of what we actually could still do, technically. Like if we're not all together, no one's in Times Square, there are no shows, but we have internet, we have graphic designers, we have social media, and we have access to like a bunch of people who are currently unemployed but incredibly talented. That was kind of the starting point. And then thinking of what could we actually do that would be something that if we were like as a consumer that I would find fun. And so I went to other events and tried to think about what I liked about them and didn't like about them, and came up with a couple things that on both sides, and then tried to build something that captured the things that I enjoyed and got rid of or fixed some of the things I didn't enjoy. The biggest thing I didn't enjoy was I just felt like my attention span online is like 1/3 what it is in real life. And even like a half an hour with one person, even if they were really interesting, just felt like long and kind of started feeling like a class. And I didn't want to do anything that felt like a class because other people were doing classes. Like nothing wrong with classes, but like I don't want to try to teach people how to act because we know my acting background. So, and I don't want to be in charge of trying to hire people to do that because it's not my specialty. But I had this entertainment journalism background, so I know how to interview people. And one of the things with entertainment journalism is like everything's really, really fast. The stories are short, the clips are short. They know that people only pay attention for like 5 seconds, and they don't try to write like long 1,200 word like think pieces. So we decided we were going to like lean into that and just have this be a really quick rotation of different talent. And then we would start to curate and customize for different like businesses and like B2B facing. And then we would run a B2C component basically to have something to keep our users engaged, and potentially, I think there's a business that hasn't quite like it's got legs, but it hasn't taken off yet because we haven't done any promotion to this concept of like booking your own mixer for your group and then being able to customize, like I want a Mean Girls person, I want a performance, I want it behind the scenes. And once you can do that, you can start to have like a birthday party or like a graduation party or like a family night that's something a little bit different than what you've been doing and like watching Netflix. So, you know, I think that there's a couple different buckets, and we started with a core product and now we're kind of trying to fine tune.
And you also make it work, like as I said before, and as you were saying before, you also make it work, both the roulette when Broadway is open and this at a price that people who are unemployed can currently like afford to spend.
Yeah, we wanted to be accessible. We have a B2B branch for this, which is where we really like, that's where we can like make money. Those are corporations that are paying us to do like offsites for executives and kind of like higher touch types of packages with the same sort of concept of this rotation of like every 15 minutes someone new coming in. But we did want it to be accessible. I always want things to be accessible. I don't want things to be like dirt cheap. I'm not a discount shopper, but I always like a deal just like anyone else. And so we really want to find is like that sweet spot of like a quality product where it really feels like I want people to not be checking their phone while they're on a mixer. Like not because I have a rule, but just because I want them to be engaged, where they actually got a break from just being inundated all day long by all this different stuff. Because you don't even have the break of like, I'm in a meeting right now, so my phone's away. Because when you're in a meeting, you can still have your phone on the desk and nobody can see it. So I think having something that actually feels engaging enough where like, it's not scripted, you don't know what somebody's gonna say, somebody might ask a crazy question, somebody might break into song, like having enough of those variables that people are actually engaged. Even for just like a really short period of time, like even for just like 5 to 10 minutes for each guest, I think is like mental, like cleanse, like a palate cleanser for your brain at this time in history. So that's what we're going for.
And you give the people who buy tickets to the mixers a chance to ask questions too, which is like, I think better than a stage door experience, to be honest, for people.
I don't want to be doing all the talking. I talk all day long. We really try. I think one of the other things that people are just generally bad at is like getting engagement from attendees for online events. It's hard enough in person, but it's even harder online because again, people are like distracted and people are nervous and people don't want to talk over each other. And like the raise your hand function on Zoom isn't really conducive to like a social group. It's much more of like a business thing. And there just isn't great technology for that. So the workarounds are kind of clunky. And the best thing that I have found so far is just the workaround of trying to have hosts managing the rooms who are like experienced in kind of being unflappable and like letting people talk and encouraging people to talk without being pushy and weird. I think it's a very fine line of like, you're in a room with 10 people, you don't know any of these other people, but like, don't be shy, and trying to set a precedent that you can ask questions that might seem silly, you can ask questions that might seem really specific and only relate to you. Like that's what's interesting about this. And those questions make it much more interesting because the questions like, tell me about being in Hamilton, everybody has answered that question 1,000 times. They're an okay place to start, but the questions that are like, I cosplay Mariah, like, do you have tips? Like, that's interesting because she doesn't have a packaged answer for that. Yeah. So like, then you get something that's much more real, and that's where people start to get engaged, even if it's not relevant to anybody else, because they aren't gonna cosplay Mariah for whatever reason. They're at least hearing something new that they're not just gonna read 9 other places the next day, you know? The idea is just something that's actually kind of like a live theater experience in the sense that it's a little different every time. You don't really know what to expect, and it's not to be like, it's not something that's getting blasted and recorded and shared everywhere. So if you weren't there, you weren't there. The end. There's no like, here's the recording later.
It's like, try to be there for the next one.
Yes.
Yeah. And then how did you come up, was one of the things that you didn't like about the other events online, like the big groups as opposed to small groups? Okay. So how did you come up with the max number of attendees?
Like honestly, trial and error. It wasn't, there's no like perfect answer to that. It wasn't scientific experiment. It was like, we've had, for groups that know each other, when it's like a corporation, they're gonna do like an event for their managers. We can have 50 to 100 people in one room and it's fine. They all know each other. The people who are going to talk are always going to be the same people, whether it's our event or somebody else's event. The people who aren't going to talk aren't going to talk. I don't feel as much, I don't feel like it's the burden on me as much in that scenario. I feel like the company knows what it's doing, and I'm going to set up a space where everyone literally has equal space on the screen. And if you want to talk, great. And if you don't, fine. When it's a group of people that could just be totally random, nobody knows each other, I think 20 people, we started at 15, then we opened it to 20 because it seems really like up to 25 feels okay. It gives me enough time that people who want to ask questions can ask questions. We don't, I'm sure you've noticed from like attending, we don't run it on like it is not like an automatic at 15 minutes you're kicked. If they are in the middle of answering a question or there's one question left that I want to get to, like I will make sure we get to everybody's questions. 20 to 25 people feels like the right amount where the room is full, there's good energy, but it doesn't feel like a cattle call where you're just, again, like it goes from feeling like a social event to feeling like a lecture at a certain point. And I'm not interested in hosting lectures. I think lectures are boring. I don't like going to lectures. I don't like going to lectures in person. I definitely don't want to go to lectures online. That's me, it's my own bias. I know that plenty of people enjoy that, but I don't. And this is like my company, so I want to do something that I would think is fun. So this is what I would think is fun.
Do you have a guest who's really like, who you've seen have like as much fun as the fans who participate on these?
I think a lot of them have fun. I mean, I think the people that are the most like amused by it or like engaged are the people who are not normally on stage. We have like a kind of a mix of these, what we call them behind the scenes, just for the sake of having like a blanket term.
Yeah.
But it's people that range from like being conductors to being like, we have an intimacy director. We have some stage managers, like those kinds of people who really like have an interesting perspective, but no one ever asks them to do anything. Like if they might ask you to be in a talk if you're part of like a huge show or something, but they're not on like Cameo, right? People aren't like paying to talk to the assistant director of whatever, Jagged Little Pill. But you get that person in front of 20 people that are interested in theater, and they're all smart as hell, like insanely smart, incredibly hardworking, and unscripted, because they're not asked the questions the way the actors are all the time. So like when you ask them, how did you get your start? They all have these great stories that are really fresh and interesting. And when you ask how, there's just, what's like the biggest challenge you've had? A lot of really easy packaged questions, you get really great answers. But I think they have a lot of fun because I think it's something that's new to them, right? It's just like not part, like people that are part of like, I was on tour with Hamilton have done 1 million interviews.
Yeah.
People that are like the stage manager at a party, when somebody finds out you're the stage manager, they might be interested and ask you a bunch of questions, but you're not getting this like kind of big platform to go talk about your job all the time, just because people don't even think about it. People don't think about the fact that someone's like conducting the orchestra.
People in their mind at the moment, it's like, oh, it just like happens like magically, like.
Yeah, but that's where you get really like a couple of the best interviews have been people like that. There's one that was like a couple that were so funny. We had a conductor on, and he was talking about the audition process, and I was like, can you explain to me, like, how do you audition to be a conductor? Like, is there an orchestra there? And he's like, no, it's so weird. It's just you and a piano player, and then like the director of the show or something will pretend to be the orchestra, and you have to like direct staring at the director like this, and like stuff like that you just don't think about. But it's so like, he did a rendition of it that was like, it was hilarious, and you're also like, how is this the process? This is crazy that this is how they audition you. But stuff like that you don't think about it, but it's really fun and interesting. And if you're into Broadway, it's a really interesting anecdote to kind of like file back in your head,
Yeah.
So that kind of stuff.
When was the moment during in the past few months that you realized that the mixers were becoming such a big thing in the Broadway community? Because they've been talked about more and more.
I think it's been a little bit of like I still don't know that I feel completely like that. But I do think we've had, we are very scrappy about the talent and getting talent. We were not talent bookers prior to this. We basically are now.
Yeah.
But we learned how to do that because we had to. And I think, one of the benchmarks has been being able to get current talent to refer us other talent, where it just feels like we have people who are legit Broadway leads who are willing to introduce us to their friends who are other legit Broadway artists, because they've worked with us. They know that they know that we are legit. They know that it's a good experience. They know that it's easy. They know that they're paid fairly. And I think that that's a good benchmark, is that you're getting referrals from the talent. And then the other piece is just getting, I think, repeat business from both individual mixer customers, and then also from people that are booking either group events or businesses, where we have like one group from a large tech company, and when that mixer was done, we got inbound emails from 2 or 3 different divisions in the company that also wanted to do mixers. I think people don't really know what it is, like going into it. Like, we have a one sheet, we try to explain it, we have a whole pitch.
Yeah.
We're also not salespeople, but we are now, because we have to be. But I think even with all the description, people don't really know what to expect, because it's not just a lecture and it's not just a performance. And so you just have to get them over the hurdle once, and then it's kind of like the gift that keeps on giving, because they have a good time and then they'll just keep coming back. And so that's been sort of the benchmarks. And I think the third thing is like we reached out to Playbill to see if they would partner with us. And, they did. And we now have some more things on the books with them. And I think of Playbill as being a really strong Broadway brand that is show agnostic, kind of like we are, right? They're not like playing favorites. They print for everyone except for Disney, basically. And so it's a brand that I've always kind of wanted to align with, but didn't really have an opportunity to do so. And so being able to work with them it's a really good team. They're really nice people. They care a lot about their business. They care about their brand. And it's something that's kind of been on my to-do list for a long time. So it isn't the partnership that I would have anticipated a year ago, but like I'm happy to have it. And I think those are kind of 3 benchmarks that have been recent where I'm like, this is not made up. This can be like a real business.
Yeah. And I'm sure a year ago, you never would have thought that you'd be doing these like virtual Zooms,
No.
however many times a week.
I mean, 6 months ago, I barely thought it. I mean, 6 months, when they closed in March for a month, I couldn't believe it was going to be a whole month.
Yeah, right?
I was despondent because Broadway was going to be closed for a month.
And 6 months ago, like, how many people even knew what Zoom was?
No, it's been a learning curve for everyone.
It has been. And then you mentioned the new events that you have teamed up with Playbill for.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like staged or virtual events?
Yeah.
So what's different about those than the
biggest difference? There's 2 differences. One is that theirs are all themed around a show. So it'll always be like 3 people from the same show. We're doing more of those on our own also, just because people like them. So people like them. We like whatever the customers like. So customers like it, we like it. But theirs will always be that. And then the second thing is they use a different platform. So we are using Zoom for ours because I like creepily being able to see the whole audience. That's also partly why it's limited to 20, because I can see everyone on one screen without toggling back and forth. Because I am trying to read the room and see what people are interested in and go a little bit off of like facial cues, which is, an imperfect system, but I think it's better than other choices, which is pay no attention.
Yeah.
The Playbill version is on a platform that is more chat based, but basically has like a stage. And when you get called on to ask your question, you get like brought on stage. So it feels a little more like a moment for you, for each person asking the question, because you're automatically up there like with the talent on the screen.
Yeah.
But when you're not asking the question, there's nowhere for you to be. You're in a chat, and you're like in a chat talking to the other people over chat. I actually think it's a really interesting platform. I didn't know about it until Playbill, but I like it for this more than I thought I would. But I don't think we're going to move off of Zoom for ours, primarily because we keep it at such a small number that we don't need to. But for Playbill, there can be basically like an unlimited number of attendees, which then gets very cumbersome over a Zoom. Yeah. But the Playbill ones are really fun. I highly encourage people to give them a try.
Oh, how can people sign up for the Playbill ones?
They're up. If you just go to Playbill, there's this like in the top menu bar, it's called Social Selects, and then there's a couple different events and more like listed on there.
Okay, I'll put the link in the description of the video. Yeah,
we have a Beetlejuice. We have a Mean Girls one on the 22nd and a Beetlejuice one on the 29th.
Ooh. It's a good month for Beetlejuice.
It is a good month for Beetlejuice.
Very good month. Yeah. I mean, October. Happy October, everyone. Yeah. And then what would your advice to someone who wants to like start their own business or company be? Because you've done that and like you've managed to start something that's successful and makes money. And
my advice is if it's not something that you think about when you're in the shower, then it's probably not a good idea for you to jump ship and try to start a business that's that business. It needs to be something that occupies you and bothers you kind of all of the time. When you're in the planning phase, like when you're thinking about it, it just needs to be, it's a long, hard road. It's not a straight line. So you'll take like 2 steps forward and like 1 step back and then like 3 steps forward and 10 steps back. And it's like very emotional. Kind of like you're like birthing a child in some ways. If it's something that you think about all the time, that is like constantly in the back of your head, it's like idea for this business and something you talk with your friends about and everyone's like kind of getting sick of hearing about it, like that's time for you to do something. if it's like a whim that you think of once and it goes away and it never bothers you again, probably not worth it. But I think that's the first piece. And the second piece is to hire / bring in, if you don't have cash to pay people, figure out a way to compensate them in a different way and get people on board who are smarter than you and know more than you do about different areas of the business. You just can't be an expert in everything. And even if you are, you just can't do everything. There's no way. And so there's a cap on what you can actually accomplish without anybody's support. So I think those are the two. Like if you have a friend that you think is a genius who loves your idea 100%, like go for it.
Yeah, you can try to be a genius in everything, but at the end of the day, it's going to stress you out more than it helps you.
Yeah, it doesn't. You can't scale it to be anything meaningful as an individual. It's too hard. You need other people in there.
And I think even if we have all this free time like we do now, it's like even if you want to learn more things, like it's still, you can't take on everything. You have to know your limit. And yeah. And then kind of unrelated question. What's the first thing you're going to do once quarantine ends and Broadway does come back?
Oh my God. I mean, when we actually have a reopening date that's a real date, I think it's going to feel internally for me, I think it's honestly going to feel like how I felt when I had my first child. Like that anticipation. I literally can't imagine how wonderful and happy and excited everyone is going to be, because right now, the whole Broadway community is like basically decimated, and people are doing their best to keep going and come up with innovative things, but there is no ultimate replacement for live theater. And the industry is a $14 billion a year like moneymaker for New York, which is gone. And I think there's just like this overwhelming sadness that you just can't quite ever really shake. So having that new thing, like I am sure I will cry. Like I know this about me already. I'm sure I will be there are so many things that we've worked on for Broadway Roulette. We had a few things that were built just before the shutdown that like we will get to launch. And it's like I literally can't even think about it right now because I won't sleep, because I lie there and I'm like, oh my God, we built this thing that was so cool. It's going to be so amazing. So that's one. I'm going to go see every show for sure. Like I'm going to go see every single show within the first, I'm going to go like to a show a day, maybe more. I didn't do that before. I went to shows where it was a new show and we didn't know that much about it. And I needed to like check it out to be able to kind of quantify how it fell into the algorithm. But I didn't, shows we knew were going to be a hit, I had other people on my team go to, or nobody. I mean, it was like, it just wasn't the top priority. And there were so many shows that were on my list that I then didn't get to see at all. And it's like, lesson has been learned. Eat dessert first. I'm going to everything. That is that's the second thing. And the third thing is that I will probably get together with my team and just drink like copious amounts of champagne. I have an all-female team just by chance, and between pregnancies and quarantine, we have not been able to drink together for ages. And so I think we will probably get together in our office in Times Square and have like bottles of champagne with like fireworks coming out of them. So I'm looking forward to that.
It's gonna be like a New Year's party.
I mean, it's gonna be, I am an optimist for Times Square in the sense that I think Broadway as an industry is nervous about coming back and having people the shows are technically open, but the community is too nervous to go. That's like their biggest fear. And I am kind of the mindset that I just think people are so starved for this that I believe when things reopen, it's gonna be like a bloodbath to this ticket line. Like I just, in a good way, like I think people are almost at that point now that they just miss it so much that they will do just about anything to go. That I think it's going to be like the most like beautiful, amazing renaissance in such a quick time. I think it's going to be so fast. And so when I'm really, really bummed, I just keep telling myself like that's coming.
It's gonna happen.
It's gonna be amazing. And like it's not 5 years away. We don't know when it is, but it's like sooner than that. And so like I can do anything between now and then. I can just like stick with it and we'll just keep going. But it's gonna be like an amazing It's going to be an amazing day. That is going to be a fabulous day.
It's going to be a beautiful day.
I can't imagine what it's going to be like when the first day that shows are actually in session. Like, that's going to be wild.
What's the first show you're going to go to? I know you said you're going to go see all of them, but what's the first show?
Either Jagged Little Pill or Girl from the North Country, probably.
Okay.
Just because I've talked to a lot of those casts. They're shows that we were sending a lot of people to prior to the shutdown. And I haven't seen either one yet. And now that I know the people that are in the cast and have heard them sing the songs from the shows, I'm like, this is insane. How did I not go see either of these?
Yeah.
There's a lot of other shows that are like definitely on the list that I will go to, but those are two shows where I just feel like it like hurts me when they come on mixers every time. And I'm like, I haven't seen it.
I want to see it so bad. Yes. That's how because I haven't seen Hamilton yet because, I mean, it's so expensive and I was going to get to work it as an usher, but that's how I feel about Hamilton. Because I've seen it on Disney Plus, but like not live, and it's totally different.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then, I mean, I was going to bring up the Music Man was getting revived. So what's a revival that you would want to see on Broadway?
I was talking about this yesterday. What do I want to see revived? Yesterday we were asking how long does something have to be off. We had like an internal debate during a mixer about how long something has to be off Broadway before you can revive it. Because I think because people really wanted Great Comet to be revived. And they were like, has it been gone long enough to revive it? I'm like, I don't think so, but I don't know if there's any rules. I don't have a revival that I need to see. The show that I want to see on Broadway is Heathers. I'm obsessed with Heathers. I also love Legally Blonde, and it's probably not a coincidence because those were like written by the same creative team. But I think it is a travesty that Heathers has not been on Broadway, and I want Heathers to come to Broadway. So it's not really a revival. We've kind of a revival because it's been in New York, but it hasn't been on Broadway. So kind of not answering your question, but that's my answer.
Oh no, I'm down. I'd also be down for Legally Blonde.
Legally Blonde was great.
Because I didn't get to see it on Broadway because I mean I obviously don't live there, but one day I know it'll happen. And then what do you think theater will be like when it does come back?
That's really hard. I think it depends at what point in the timeline of a vaccine having been out that theater reopens. I think there will be more shows that are 90 minutes, no intermission. I think there will be more shows that are plays that are just smaller upfront, lower capitalization, don't have to have a packed house to like recoup kind of situation. And the easiest way to do that is to lower the cost up front by having a smaller, like a one-man play. So I think more like Latin history kind of stuff and less Moulin Rouge kind of stuff. And I think it's going to be a little bit like going to church, like in terms of like the spiritual experience. I think people are going to be, I mean, I might be overly optimistic, but I think people are going to be so happy to be there that I do believe the audience, whatever rules they have in place, I believe audiences will follow. I think they'll follow them without complaining. And I think it'll be like a really communal experience, even more than it was before, because everybody will know what this industry has been through to get back to where they are now and get people back into the seats. So those are my predictions. But I hope that it goes back to as close to possible pre-COVID, because I thought Broadway was great pre-COVID, and I continue to think it's great. So, there's things that people are working on, like having more inclusion and more diversity and that kind of stuff. And I don't think that's really COVID related. I think it's more related to having a break. Because everybody has a break, they have a time to reflect. But COVID in particular, I think is much more related to like the bottom line financially and what kind of shows go up. But I do think that I think Broadway will continue to push forward with, initiatives to try to make more opportunities and easier paths for a wider range of people.
Yeah, it's something that even if you don't know you're into theater, it's something that I wish that like everyone had the opportunity to go to New York, to go to Times Square, to go see a Broadway show, because like it's something like you can't describe the feeling. It's just so magical.
I mean, I think that the fact that the theater, they're like old and falling apart and the seats are uncomfortable, like to me, that's part of the experience.
Yeah.
I do think most of that will remain because it's just the idea that they're gonna, put in new ventilation systems or something that make it safe. Like it opens up all kinds of legal issues to start to change the physical theaters since they're landmarked buildings. I don't think anybody can afford it. So I don't think that will happen. I think it will be like wear a mask. We don't have like concessions are more expensive. You can order them in advance. Like I think there'll be changes like that, but hopefully it'll go. I liked it before. So I hope that the theaters are still a little dingy and the seats are still uncomfortable because that's what I'm used to.
And do you think that you're going to keep the virtual stuff with Broadway Roulette around when it does come back? Okay.
I'm not interested in building something that is like this is not like a hobby for my team to keep us busy while Broadway's closed. We don't have the luxury of just like doing that for fun. I think I visualize it moving forward as a marketing tool for new shows where they can like have their cast and crew on a mixer, and we can kind of like book club, where we can like how authors go around to book clubs. I think of like that. I think of it as an add-on that you go and you see like your spin landed on Chicago, and then you can like sign, if you pay extra, you can sign on to your Zoom afterwards, and like while they're backstage, you can kind of like do a mixer with them backstage, because I think the backstage and the stage door will be very different. I'm not somebody who thinks they're going to be gone forever. Like I think nothing is going to be gone forever. They may be gone for a while. And it'll be harder to get that kind of access. So like a digital access post show, I think could be really interesting. And also as a way to just expand our footprint, because prior to this, we were limited to people who were physically in New York. Like I could not sell a ticket to somebody who lived in LA, which was not a thing. Now I think we can offer these continued as like private events, parties, things like that, so that people who can't get to New York can still have like a little experience of Broadway through these mixers. And I think that should continue regardless.
It's so special. And then for people who want to book mixers right now, and when Broadway comes back, who want to use Broadway Roulette, where can people find you all on social media, and where can people find you?
We are just at Broadway Roulette on social, and we have an at Broadway Mixer account on Instagram, which is where we post like hints and things about the actual mixers. And then our website's just BroadwayRoulette.com. And right now, if you type in BroadwayRoulette.com, it basically takes you to a homepage for mixers, because there is no real ticketing business. Like longer term, there will be like 2 sites that live sort of together. But right now it's just basically all mixer, because I can't really sell you tickets yet, unfortunately, much as I would like to.
It's like we can't take a gamble really right now.
I mean, it's available, like you can buy tickets, but for next March, but I don't know what the shows are going to be. Anybody who places an order now for next year will be contacted by us for a million different reasons to like make sure we get everything right, and if their show is actually happening or not. So we'll see.
Yes, exactly. Well, I'm glad that you could come on and talk with me.
Thanks for having me.
Of course.
Thank you so much. Take care.
Thanks for watching this episode of Backstage with Becca B. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Becca B Talks TV. Or for more exclusive content from this interview and more, you can follow me on Instagram and Facebook at Backstage with Becca B. Make sure to subscribe to my channel and like this video, or if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, go ahead and give me a 5-star rating. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!